why most lives are lies and how Nietzsche escaped it. Most people think they are living. They breathe, they work, they laugh, they scroll. They go to school, get jobs, fall in love, buy things, post pictures of their meals, and search for purpose in weekend escapes. But something inside them whispers, "This isn't it. This can't be all there is." And deep down they know. They know they're performing. They know they're conforming. They know they've accepted a script, a system, a definition of life that was handed to them, not chosen by them, and yet they keep going. Why? Because the lie is comfortable, because the truth is terrifying. And that's exactly what Nietzsche saw. That's why he broke the machine. That's how he escaped the lie. Let's start with a brutal question. Are you living your life or surviving someone else's idea of it? Most of us never ask that. We inherit values, beliefs, goals, and fears like family heirlooms. We're told what success looks like, what morality means, what happiness should feel like. We're told to be good, to be productive, to fit in, to follow rules. And slowly, piece by piece, our individuality erodes, our fire dims, our soul gets buried under expectations. We become what Nietzsche called the herd mass of humans who follow each other not because they're free, but because they're afraid.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Nietzsche's entire philosophy was a war cry against this. He didn't just want us to think, he wanted us to wake up. To realize that most of what we call truth is just consensus. Most of what we believe is just inheritance, and most of what we chase is distraction. He looked at society and saw a play, a performance. People wearing masks, saying lines, pretending things matter that don't. And he asked, what happens if you rip that mask off? What happens if you stop pretending? What happens if you look straight into the chaos of existence and say, yes, I see you, and I will create meaning anyway? That's the essence of his rebellion. He wasn't telling us to abandon life. He was telling us to reclaim it. But that means risk, that means pain, that means standing alone outside the comfort of the herd. Because once you realize you've been living a lie, once you stop numbing yourself with entertainment, with routine, with borrowed beliefs, you're left with a terrifying freedom. You have to decide everything for yourself. What is good, what is evil, what is worth living for or dying for, what is beauty, what is truth. You can't outsource those answers anymore. You become the creator. And that's both a burden and a liberation. Nietzsche called this the path of the Übermensch, not a superior man in the arrogant sense, but a human who transcends, a human who dares to live authentically, who creates values instead of consuming them, who walks a path not given but forged. This person isn't controlled by guilt, by tradition, by social pressure. They're not chained by what others think is right. They live with intensity, with art, with danger. They don't seek safety. They seek becoming more themselves with every breath. But let's not romanticize it. Escaping the lie isn't glamorous. It's lonely. It's painful. It often begins with collapse, when the mask breaks, when the job feels hollow, when the relationship ends, when the depression hits, when the old answers stop working. That's the moment of crisis. And Nietzsche would say, good Because now the real work begins. Now the lies can't hold you. Now you can face the void, and from that void, build something real. But how do we start? How do we know what's lie and what's truth? It begins with one radical act: honesty. Not the surface level kind, but the kind that burns. The kind where you sit alone in silence and ask, what do I actually believe? What do I actually want? What am I pretending not to know? Most people never do this. They distract themselves with noise. But if you can sit in that silence long enough, answers start to emerge. Not easy ones, not comforting ones, but real ones. And they ignite something ancient inside you, a sense that there is more, that you are more, that life could be more than this repetition of borrowed dreams. Nietzsche believed that truth wasn't something you find, it's something you become. You don't discover meaning like a treasure, you create it like art. You sculpt it from experience, from suffering, from rebellion against the absurd. And when you do that, when you stop living the lie, you start to feel alive for the first time. Not safe, not certain, but awake. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the goal isn't comfort. Maybe the goal is consciousness. The collapse of comfort. Why Nietzsche wanted you to suffer. If we're being honest, most of us are addicted to comfort. We seek it in our routines, our relationships, our beliefs. We want things to be predictable, familiar, easy. And when they're not, we panic. We call it crisis, failure, misfortune. But Nietzsche flips the entire script. He looked at suffering not as something to avoid, but as something to embrace. Not because he was cruel, but because he understood a truth most people run from. Comfort is a cage. It numbs us. It makes us compliant. It lulls us into a life that looks fine on the outside, but is hollow on the inside. Nietzsche didn't want you to suffer for suffering's sake. He wanted you to suffer because you were becoming something. And there is no becoming without breaking. Think about it. Every moment of deep transformation in your life probably came through discomfort, through heartbreak, through loss, through disillusionment, through the collapse of something you thought you needed. Nietzsche called this the path of great health, a paradoxical idea that you only become truly strong, truly whole, by going through the fire. He despised philosophies and religions that promised escape from pain. To him, they were lies. They encouraged weakness. They offered illusions instead of truth. They promised a heaven to avoid confronting the earth. But Nietzsche said no. Face the earth. Face the pain. Face yourself. That's where life begins. And this is where most people turn away, because suffering is scary. It strips away our protections. It exposes us. And yet, Nietzsche believed that pain is the raw material of greatness. Not just physical pain, but existential pain. The pain of asking, why am I here? And realizing no one can answer that for you. The pain of realizing that every belief you inherited might be false. The pain of standing alone in a universe that doesn't owe you meaning. But instead of collapsing under that weight, Nietzsche said, stand up, create meaning. Become the kind of person who doesn't need illusions to live fully. He had a name for this process, Amor, Fati, the love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but loving it. even the suffering, especially the suffering, because it's shaping you. It's carving you into something more. The weak person resents their fate. The strong person uses it. They take the pain and turn it into power. They take the rejection and turn it into clarity. They take the chaos and turn it into art. This is not passive acceptance. This is active transformation. But here's the question Nietzsche forces us to ask. What if your suffering is the most honest part of your life? What if it's the signal that something false is breaking, that something deeper is trying to emerge? Most of us medicate that pain, literally and metaphorically. We drown it in distractions, in habits, in narratives. But what if we listened to it? What if we leaned into it? What if we stopped asking, how do I get out of this, and started asking, what is this trying to teach me? Nietzsche believed that only by going through this fire can we become worthy of freedom. Because what good is freedom if you're still a slave to comfort? What good is success if it's built on fear? What good is happiness if it vanishes the moment life stops going your way? He wanted us to be dangerous, not to others, but to the forces that control us, to the systems, the assumptions, the dead ideas that keep us small. And to become dangerous, you have to suffer, you have to descend, you have to be willing to lose everything you think you are so you can find who you truly are. So the next time life breaks you, when things fall apart, when the ground disappears beneath you, don't reach for the nearest distraction. Don't numb yourself. Don't rush to rebuild the old identity just because it's familiar. Sit in the rubble. Ask the deeper questions. Let the pain speak. Let it burn away what isn't real. That's what Nietzsche did. That's how he escaped the lie. Not by running from pain, but by walking straight into it and coming out transformed. The birth of the self, how to live without permission. Once the old illusions collapse, once you've faced the fire and realized that comfort was never the goal, you stand in a strange place. It's quiet, empty. There's no script to follow anymore, no clear direction. This is the moment that most people fear the most, because it's the moment after identity dies and before something new is born. But Nietzsche saw this as sacred. This is the space where the self, yourself, can finally begin to emerge. Not the version of you that society shaped, not the one your parents hoped for, not the algorithmic echo of what you think the world wants, but the raw, unfiltered, unapproved you. And that is something most people never meet, because most people are still living with one foot in the lies. To live without permission doesn't mean to be reckless or selfish. It means to stop waiting for someone to validate your voice, waiting for culture to give you a label, waiting for a sign that it's okay to be you. Nietzsche saw this waiting game as a slow death. He believed that the human spirit is not meant to be granted freedom, it is meant to take it. That's the difference between the herd and the creator. The herd waits for direction, the creator gives it to themselves. And it's not easy, because living without permission means you will be misunderstood. You will be criticized. You will be alone at times. But in that solitude, something rare happens. You become real. Ask yourself, how much of your life is lived for approval? How many of your choices are shaped by fear of being judged or rejected or standing out? How many times have you silenced yourself because your truth didn't fit the moment? Nietzsche would call that spiritual cowardice. Not because you're weak, but because you've been trained to be obedient. Obedient to culture, to dogma, to the invisible gaze of others. But life doesn't belong to those who obey. It belongs to those who dare. Those who dare to speak what hasn't been spoken, to walk where no one has walked, to live a life that doesn't make sense to others, but makes perfect sense to their soul. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop asking for permission is the moment you begin to live a life others admire, not because you chased their admiration, but because you didn't need it. That's the energy people feel when they meet someone who has become. There's a gravity to it, a quiet power. These people don't preach, they radiate. They don't compete, they create. And they don't conform because they've passed through the fire. They've faced their own nothingness, and they've come out on the other side with something no one can give or take: authenticity. But authenticity is not a brand. It's not a curated identity. It's not doing whatever you want because that's just who I am. Nietzsche's idea of authenticity was earned. It was a result of deep introspection, of breaking from the herd, of choosing your values, not absorbing them. He wanted you to ask, what do I believe in truly when no one is watching? What code will I follow if I'm the last person on earth? What principles will I live by if it costs me everything? This is the real test of freedom. And this is where the self is born, not in comfort, but in conviction. When you start to live this way, something remarkable happens. Life stops feeling like a maze and starts feeling like a canvas. You stop trying to find your place in the world and start creating your place. You stop chasing meaning and begin embodying it. Each decision becomes a brushstroke. Each action a declaration. You're not just surviving anymore, you're composing, not from a script, but from your own inner rhythm. And suddenly, the world doesn't feel so heavy, because you're no longer carrying the weight of other people's expectations. You're walking your own path, and every step is freedom. The eternal return. Would you live this life again? Imagine this. One day, a demon appears to you and says, this life, exactly as you've lived it, with every joy, every heartbreak, every mistake, every moment of despair, you will have to live it again. Not once, but forever, over and over again, for all eternity. That's Nietzsche's idea of eternal return, and is not just a thought experiment, it's the ultimate test, a philosophical pressure cooker, because it forces you to confront one terrifying question. Are you living a life you would willingly repeat forever? Most people, if they're honest, would say no. They'd flinch. They'd think of the years wasted in fear, the compromises made for approval, the dreams abandoned, the truths left unspoken. They'd realize how much of their life has been lived in hesitation, in distraction, in denial. And that's the whole point. Nietzsche didn't invent eternal return to scare us. He used it as a mirror, a way to reflect our choices back to us with brutal clarity. If the thought of reliving your life fills you with dread, maybe that dread is a signal. Maybe it's asking you to change. But change into what? Into someone who lives with such presence, such intensity, such authenticity, that even the suffering becomes sacred. Someone who doesn't just endure life, but affirms it. Every second, every breath, even the painful ones, because that's the mark of a life well lived. Not that it's easy or perfect, but that it's yours, fully yours, claimed, felt, owned. Nietzsche believed that the highest form of existence wasn't comfort or happiness. It was affirmation, to look at the chaos and still say yes, yes to this moment, yes to this fate, yes to this self. But how do we build that kind of life? We start by paying attention, by asking, am I making choices I'd be proud to repeat? Am I becoming someone I'd want to meet again and again and again? Not in some distant afterlife, but here, now, in this moment. Because eternity isn't just some abstract cosmic loop, it's the weight of your decision, it's the echo of your values, it's how deeply you've lived, how courageously you've loved, how honestly you've faced yourself. Nietzsche escaped the lie not by searching for a better world, but by committing to this one, with all its mess, all its darkness, all its absurd beauty. He wanted us to stop waiting, stop deferring, stop hoping for salvation from outside, and instead become worthy of our own existence. That's the challenge, that's the gift. To live in such a way that if eternity knocked on your door, you'd open it without regret. So now, ask yourself, if you had to live your life again, would you? If the answer is no, then today is your wake-up call. Rewrite the script, burn the mask, tell the truth, because the only life worth living is the one you'd live forever.